So hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experience. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. My name's Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce consultant, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And thank you for joining us. And we've got a wonderful guest speaker, and I will let Matthew take it from here.
Thanks, Tina. My name is MatthewPHoffman, and I am a marriage and relationship coach who helps dissatisfied men and women create the relationships of their dreams. And we are excited to have Jeremy Roadruck with us today on our show. He is a men's mentor, a relationship strategist, and a multi-time best-selling author. Jeremy is known for his no-nonsense, results-driven, yet playful approach to helping men fix their marriages, reconnect with their kids, and lead with confidence. Jeremy is a husband, a father, an international champion, and 6-degree Kung Fu master. Jeremy is also a hypnotherapist, neurostrategist, and a former soldier, and a former factory worker. With all that under his belt, Jeremy knows what it means to work hard and play smart. He's helped high-performing dads master the 3 relationships that matter most: life, love, and business, and do it all in weeks instead of years. So welcome, Jeremy.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Tina. I'm excited to be here and play some games.
Yeah. So we got to talking before we pushed record, so we were already having fun. So we're going to see where this goes. But Jeremy, as I was going through, I don't think when you and I talked last that you had mentioned anything about your rank in Kung Fu. So I thought that was pretty impressive, coming from International Taekwondo Federation myself, holding rank in there. And I have been in the martial arts all of my adult life, so I completely understand that background. And then you were in the service. So what branch of the service, just because of what we talked about?
Yeah, I was in the Army Reserve, so I was stationed at Fort Home.
Very cool. Very cool. And I thank you for your service. That's very, very awesome. So I'm excited, and I'm going to actually let Matthew kick off questions here, because you and Matthew sit in the same realm and work with men. And so because I focus my work towards men, I work with women, obviously, but I feel that men just don't have the support that they need. And so I think it was super important to have the both of you on here together. And so I will let Matthew take it off from here.
Thanks, Tina.
Perfect.
Yeah, we definitely men are certainly different, and I never use the all or none, because I think that's not fair to men at all. But Jeremy, I'd love to know, what do you see as kind of the foundational qualities or the things that have to be present in order for a relationship to thrive and succeed?
So that is fun because it's the relationship between 2 people, which is, think about that word relationship and break it apart. There's the relating part, and then there's the ship. The relating is 2 people figuring stuff out with each other. It's dynamic, it's flexible, it's elastic. And the idea of the ship, that's the structure. And unfortunately, a lot of people, and especially men, put the structure first, and they have a ship relation, not a relationship. Because do you want to be right, or do you want to get results? This is the constant thing I ask my clients, because if what you were doing was right, you'd be getting your results. So if you're not, this feedback, dude. And it's that realization, is this really the hill you want to die on? And is it really what you think you're fighting for? You're fighting with your wife, or are you fighting for a happy future? And it's really that ownership and that clarity. So the first thing is relationship. And playing in just that frame. And then the second is a level of ownership. Like, both of you are allowed to feel. You're both allowed to have your opinions. Very early in my relationship with my wife, she had a previous relationship that was not the healthiest. And there was a point when the 2 of us came to a loggerhead, and things got heated a little bit, and things got a little loud. And she took the kids and she left. because that was the pattern she had learned from the past as a way to be safe. When she came back, I said, look, I'm never going to make you wrong for what you feel. I might not agree with it. That's my business. It might be wrong. It might be based on false information, but that's all secondary because whatever you feel is important. It's something coming up that we need to address because we are a team. So I'm not going to make you wrong. We need to figure things out. And she's tested on me, early in the marriage on that, but I have never made her wrong for how she feels. If I don't agree with it, cool. That's my business. And I'll be like, I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that that's accurate, but you're allowed to feel what you feel because that's where she is. And me diminishing or denying her lived experience or her reality helps nobody. So that's the big thing I see is that ability to take ownership with each other. And you can say, I don't like what you're saying. Okay. You're still allowed to have that opinion.
Yeah, I love that concept. And, I want to kind of follow it up. When I'm working with couples, I say, there's two viewpoints in every relationship, and they're both right. Neither of you have the right to say, you can't, you don't, you won't, you shouldn't, right? You don't want to should all over your partner.
Right.
And, you just got to understand that it's the viewpoint. And so when you talked about, winning and losing and dying on the hill, right? And I love that. And a question in one of another interview that my wife and I did in our podcast is the couple said, we've got this rule. And when we're arguing or there's conflict or disagreement, one will always ask the other, is this something you want to die on the mountain for? Meaning you are not going to let go no matter what. It's a life and death situation. And if you are, okay, I need to know that. But it's more like, hey, how can we get to a third option instead of mine or yours that works for both of us?
And that's that fighting for a compelling future that aligns you both. I'm not fighting with my wife. I'm fighting for this bigger vision. And if that's your loyalty and your integrity, then it's easier for either of you to get out of your own way or apologize or own your own stuff. You know what? I'm being pigheaded about this. I'm only thinking of one way to get there. You have a different approach. Let's explore it. I'm open to that. Because it's not you and me only up the hill. It's well, we want to get to this higher level. We can both get there. We can align vision. We can align values. And now it's a we, not you versus me.
Yeah, I listened to the two of you guys talk, and so my late husband and I, we had a great relationship. So he had been through 17 years of marital therapy because his ex-wife she wanted him to always be told he was wrong, and he was this. Anyways, what happened is she took this piece of coal and she got him all smashed until I got the diamond end of it. And so he was very good at saying thank you for expressing that, or thank you for letting me know that. And so that was something that was really good. And I learned early on that if I pushed, it would push a button and it would trigger him. And so I knew when I felt like I wasn't in the right place, not to have the conversation now. It's best for me to go cool off someplace else, come back. And one of the things I learned through my first marriage was that I always said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. And so I learned that it's not, when I would come back to my late husband from leaving the situation, I would come back and I'd say, I apologize for how that made you feel. Not apologizing for my action or my feeling, like you said, Jeremy, but apologizing for however my action made him feel. So it's important.
Yeah, that's powerful ownership, because then you're owning the impact of what you did. And it's not about the thing that we do necessarily that's hurtful. It's what it means to the other person. Because if I were to treat you the way you just treated me, it would mean blah, blah, blah. Ergo, you treated me that way. It must also mean, versus clarify, hold on, you're doing this way. To me, that means this, but you keep doing it. So I suspect it means something different to you. Could you walk me through what that means to you? Just that curiosity, it opens up the conversation. Again, because I don't have a need to be right. I just want to get the result. So if I'm like banging my head into a door after about 2 times, I start to get curious and go, wait a minute, I'm coming at this wrong. That has to be the answer. So educate me. And the minute you ask for that coaching or ask for that education, it's much easier to receive it versus someone's going to just ram it down your head.
Yeah. And I think that you talked to Jeremy like about winning, right? In that, men want to win, right? We want to be victorious. Like I won the day, my opinion, the competition. And I think women do this as well, Tina, is that in relationships, before you get married, it's me and it's you, right? But once you get married or once you're in that committed long-term relationship, it's us. And so the filter is, does the relationship win? Because if the relationship wins, I do, and so do you. So it's much less about that singular element. It doesn't mean you get lost, but it means you're fighting for us. And if fighting for us means I need to allow you to have this opinion or thought or feeling on something and be supportive of it, doesn't mean I agree to it or adopt it as my own, but I respect you and the fact that that's how you feel and think about any one issue.
Yeah. Well, just like you said with is this the mountain you're going to die on? It's like that in my vernacular, that's a must. Is that a must never? Like, is that a hard line? Because if it is, okay, you guys are having a fight about XYZ. Cool. Is that worth getting divorced over? Well, no. Oh, okay. That's good to know. Versus if it is, that's a much bigger issue to deal with versus it's just a rule conflict. It's just, I prefer this, you prefer that. All right, cool. But if it's, wholesale destruction of a certain belief system in other people, that might be a big messier conversation.
So I'd love to hear in your experience, Jeremy, and Tina, I want to hear you weigh on this too. Where do most men get it wrong? I didn't say all men, but I said where do most men like what do you think is kind of a general misinterpretation that men may make in what they should or shouldn't be doing?
For a lot of guys, they get stuck on being right. And they have one way. In business, we would call it diving board versus Parthenon. Diving board is, there's a giant pool of money and you have a job and you dive into the pool one way. And when that gets broken, panic. Versus if you have multiple streams of income, you have multiple marketing strategies, you have multiple ways to get fit, you have multiple ways to be healthy. Any one or two go down, I got 6 or 7 more. It's not a big deal. But for a lot of guys, they get so dialed in on some specific thing, and to be wrong in that means I have to be wrong everywhere and question everything about myself. And it's like, dude, take a deep breath. It's okay to get this thing wrong over here. That doesn't automatically mean you're wrong or ignorant or stupid in all these other areas. Like don't paint with such a broad brush. So, figure out, how can I be more accurate on this? How can I be more compassionate to myself and give myself room to breathe versus everything feels like life and death all the time. Dude, it's okay. Relax, breathe, slow down.
So you ask what men do, but I think women do the same thing. Strong women or women that are trying to, especially if they've been married one other time before and they're coming into a relationship, they feel like they have to be strong and they're not going to let the man walk all over them this time. So they have to be right as well. So that's there. When I'm working with the clients that I work with, even though we're uncoupling them, my job is not to be mean to the other side, but to teach my client how to communicate in the very best possible way to the other side, to their soon-to-be ex, and in their attorney's aspect. And so you guys, I'm sure, know this, that all the relationships, especially, and I have one in mind that they got together when they were younger and then they've just kind of built, and there was never really any foundation of communication. And that's where I work with my clients. And it's fun to come back to them and they'll say, well, gosh, we're actually communicating for the first time. It's like, yeah, that's where this broke up. And if we could have them go to somebody like you, like I truly honestly think, having talked to both of you, that if we could send people to you guys instead of marriage therapists, that we could have this taken care of in a very short period of time instead of the 17 years that my husband spent.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people that the only exercise they seem to get is jumping to conclusions. Because you said this, you mean that. And then they castigate you, they attack you, they excoriate you, they punish you because of what they believe you meant in the thing you said versus clarify. Hold on, I heard you say this, and I'm taking it to understand and mean that. Is that what you meant? Or was it something else and I missed it? Just asking that feedback loop, it allows the other person to clarify versus, dare you say that to me? Don't ever talk to me like that again. It's like, I just asked you, how was your day? Yeah, but you did it in that tone. What tone? Like that's a big issue with me and my wife because I don't hear my tonality. I'm not that auditory the way she is. And she's like, no, I don't like that tone. And I'm like, okay, thanks for the feedback. I heard nothing. Do we take it from the top? Hey, babe, how was your day? Is that better?
Yeah. And I think, one of the important things when talking about communication, I think it's the glue really for all relationships, whether you say it's business or personal or marriage or whatever it is. And I think um, if you know that your partner, your spouse has a landmine, a trigger, and you step out on it anyways, that's just not loving and kind. That's not saying I see it this way, I don't agree that you should see it that way. It's just it's not loving and it's not kind. So it's kind of like if you know there's a landmine there, why would you step on it? So if I know that my wife doesn't want me to, spend more than $500 without talking to her and I do it anyways. So I think it's a dumb rule, right? And then she gets angry about it and I get defensive because she's coming at me on something. I've created the problem because I stepped in the landmine. So I think knowing your partner's triggers are and respecting them, honoring them enough not to get in it. And I think that Tina, you talked about the effective communication, like, holy cow, we're getting divorced and we're talking better than we ever have. It's because you and others are giving a framework and saying, this is what we need to make progress. And I think if couples backed up and had that discussion, like, hey, what does communication mean to you and understanding it? And what do you need to feel like we're communicating on the same level? And there may be parallels and there may be total differences, but it's figuring out that dance so that if I meet this for you, are you willing to meet this for me? Because here's my needs. So it's really just a question of meeting needs and understanding, and you can't know those if you don't talk about them and openly share what they might be.
Yeah. That's part of when I talk with couples, we go through a relationship vision. And the fun thing is when I talk about relationship vision, they go, what's that? Okay, well, I think I have an idea why you might be struggling because you have no compelling future. You have no true north for your relationship that you're trying to build or move towards. It's just, well, we like each other, the chemistry's good, and we like spending time together. Okay, great. That's a good reason to date. But if you're going to get married, like, where are you going? What does this mean to you? And so I talk about 5 to thrive. The first one is, what do you need? Because if your needs aren't being met, people do very bad things to get their needs met sometimes when they're in like a massive place of scarcity. So how can we get your needs met in a healthy way, in a sustainable way? Because if you can understand your partner's needs and fill them all up, and they can understand your needs and fill them all up, there's no room for anybody else to enter into that conversation between the two of you because you're so full and focused with each other. Nah, I'm good. It's fantastic. Why would I like there's just not even that need or that desire to be entranced or enticed by anyone else. It's just kind of confusing. Like, nah, I'm good. Thanks. Weird.
So we're talking about intimate relationships here, but and Matthew, you touched on work relationships and stuff. So I have a family member that we are on opposite sides of probably the same coin, but we're so different in what, it's taken me a long time. We'll put this on my shoulders. It's a long time for me to go, I just need to not speak to this person, because no matter what I say, I'm not going to say it right. I'm not going to say it in the tone that's right. No matter the fact that I care deeply about this family member, I just know that I can't. And they sent a text to me a while back that was an angry text. They were saying that they didn't like the way I responded to a gift they bought for me couple years ago or whatever. And my response back to them, because I'd been doing my work, was, I'm so glad. Well, I first said, I'm glad that you could get that off your chest. And I'm glad that you felt safe enough to do that. And I really, truly meant that they felt safe enough to be able to say that to me, because I don't feel safe saying that to them at this point. And in order to keep things in harmony, it's just best for me to let it drop. And I talk to my clients all the time about, it's just a gray rock, drop it and walk away from it, because it's not worth making this part of my family worse than it could be. So I'm just going to let it drop and let them know that I care for them.
Yeah, sometimes you cannot understand someone who doesn't want you to understand them. And so then all you can do is respectfully put distance. You can call it a barrier, you can call it a boundary, but it's not like I'm doing this because I want to, but I've realized this is the healthiest thing for both of us, to just have room to exist and not interface, because it's just, we're too oil and water. It's like on a keyboard and you take two notes right next to each other and hit them. It creates dissonance, and the sound wave is literally crashing. When you go separate by one gap, now you get resonance, and the sound waves reinforce each other. Why is that? I don't know. It's Tuesday. Move on. Like it's just, it is. So you can complain about it, and you can, sit there and noodle on it, or again, results. You know what? I think you're an amazing person. I think you have like just a massive amount of passion, and the things you care about, I just can't commit them the way that you do to create an alignment. So with love and respect, I'm just going to keep my distance. And it's not because I don't care, but I care more about us being able to coexist with each other in a healthy way than trying to force you to play my game or force me to play your game. Is that just we're on the same page? Is that okay with you? Is that, and they may still be offended by that, and nerf them if they are, because like this is still how I'm going to play the game. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So then this question goes out to both of you. So when you get a couple that runs into that, how do you handle that, Jeremy?
We're going to extract some stuff, because there's what people say, which is interesting. Then there's what they mean, which is usually a layer beneath that. And then what is that meaning? What is it they intend? What is it really trying to address at the bottom? So like if I have somebody complaining about, your work schedule is this and you're so busy and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's somebody who doesn't feel like a priority. So then what can you do to help your partner feel like a priority? So you're listening for the need, or you're listening for the wound, or you're listening for the impact beneath the words. What is their heart really saying, or sore or hurt about? And can we get to the source at the deeper level and resolve it there? And sometimes we have people who are hurt by a family member in their childhood. And now all men are, all women are, and they're painting this huge brush. I have a client right now, and he's married to a lady, and he's being punished for the sins of the guys that she was with before. And so they're in conflict. And so one of the things I gave him as a frame is he needs to talk with her about the boys that she was involved with in the past, because he is a man who has and continues to do the work on being his best self. Those boys did inappropriate things. Those boys, and boys in their 30s and 40s, but giving them a label to diminish their impact, that they were just ignorant and they were childish and they were selfish and they were hurtful, but I am a different creature. And so he can begin to claim a different frame with her, that I'm here as a man and I'm bigger than these conflicts, and my belief in you and me and us is bigger than this moment. And the more he can create that identity, she'll test him because she's afraid and she's been hurt, justifiably defensive. But the people that hurt you, I'm not them. And the more he passes her tests and her challenges with love and with grace, the more she can relax into and believe him that he really is who he says he is, and he really is what he is. And so that's part of that conversation. What is the deeper layer, like the existential, ontological stuff that's really driving this? The doubt, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the hurt. And let's get that stuff healed at its core. And sometimes I can do that with a couple together, or sometimes I work with them each individually, and then I bring them together to help them apologize in a way that heals each other for other people's past damage. And then we can get out of no more fault, no more blame, no more guilt, no more shame, just ownership and the ability to respond instead of react. Because as long as you're reacting to each other, you're defensive. You can't be fully present when you're reacting because, like Matthew said, they have those triggers. And it's like, I don't want to hit that. Cool. My answer is let's just go remove the triggers. There's ways to do that in your nervous system and things. But it's how can I, with my partner, like, I don't want to damage you. Like, you're the one person on the planet that I want to protect more than anything. So thank you for the feedback. That was never my intention. How can I make this right with you? And that ownership back and forth, it's a seesaw climbing higher and higher, but it's little wins, little victories, little apologies, little healings to get them to that place. And for me, the grounding is always back in, do you want to be right or do you want to get results?
Yeah.
And as long as you're committed to results, we're going to get there because I'm not going to give up until we get there. I'm going to change approaches because I'm not attached to the method or the vehicle. I don't
Mhm.
have to be right. I just want to get that result. I will make stuff up that makes a lot of sense to get there.
Good, good. And Matthew.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think when there's conflict or disagreement or different opinions, or hey, I'm coming from here and you're coming from there, I love to always bring the question in, what is it that you really want here? And it'll help me understand what it is you want. Because I think it's usually somebody saying something and somebody's not hearing it. Or, and so if it's okay, is this what you're saying? Yeah, it is, or no, it's not. It's usually not what's necessarily being shared outrightly, but it's something deeper seated or underneath it or behind it. Like, okay, so it's not the fact that you didn't take the trash out, right? It's the fact that you never listened to me. I said, would you take the trash out? You said, yes, you would, and you didn't. You obviously don't care about honoring your promises to me. That's the issue. Has nothing to do with did the trash make it to the trash can, right? So, and then another great question to follow up to that is, tell me what your ideal outcome is here. Like, what would
Mhm.
nirvana look like, right? Because if you can give it to them, well, babe, I'm happy to, of course, if that's what you want, I would want to give it to you if you can. If you can't, then there's a discussion about it, is it your values? Is it your principles? Are you physically not able? Do you not know how? Right? Then you can talk about how we can make that happen. And Jeremy brought up the issue of, history, right? Or there's a limiting belief there. I'm working with a couple right now, and the wife saw a horrible model of parenting and relationship model, arguing, making promises, never fulfilling, not being there, not showing up. So she's like, I can't trust you. My mom could never trust my dad to do what he said he would do. So guess what? I'm not going to trust anybody to do what they say they do. They must be lying. They must be disingenuous, right? We had to go back and take that belief and talk about when you were young and you saw this, it served a purpose for you, right? Because in order for you to put context into your parents' relationship, you had to put the wall up and not trust because you were disappointed time after time after time. But now, wait a minute, you're in a new relationship. Your husband hasn't done any of those things. You can, and you need to learn how to trust him. So we took that belief that used to protect her, and I said, we got a new job, and we did some neurolinguistic programming, and we talked about how do we turn that limiting belief that brought you to today and you're applying to your relationship now, how do we turn that into helping you in your relationship now and reframing it so that you can trust your husband and not put him in the position of you're putting your parents in because they always disappointed you, right? And so I think it's really important to have people understand if there's a limiting belief, a gremlin, something that happened that you're saying, well, it happened to me once, it's going to happen again, right? History repeats itself. And you've got to learn how to take those obstacles, those roadblocks, and move them aside so they're no longer impacting this new relationship because you've got a new bond together. And so you're going to work and create that. So, I kind of like, you want to give your partner what they want or what they need, right? We're not ATM machines. It's not, oh, you want, so I just got to serve and give you everything you want. No, we're not there to be a doormat. But if you can give them what they need, wouldn't you want to? If that's what they need. So the question is, can you? And if you can't, understanding what you can do to give them some support.
Yeah, that goes back to playing a win-win game. We both get to feel warm, big, and happy. Because if you fill your partner to overflowing and they fill you to overflowing, who loses? And it's like once you realize, oh, my partner's complaining, right? I call that squeaky wheel syndrome. They're just out of lemonade, so we just got to fill the lemonade back up because they want to give to you, but they're depleted, so they're complaining and kvetching and squeaking. Awesome. Time to pause. Let me give to you and get you back to a healthy place. Then you can give from abundance versus giving from scarcity, which is never fun. And, you know, if you had it all your way, how would we do this? It would be this and this and this. Cool. Actually, I can do two of those. The third one, I would need this to be able to do the third one. Could you help me with that third piece? And then you could have it exactly the way you want. I can. Yeah. It's like win-win. And if it's not, let's fix it. Right? When you start to look at marriage, parenting, win-win or no deal, client relationship, win-win or no deal. Like, no, it's we're both going to come out of this on top and feel amazing, or we're not playing this game. We're going to make a new game because this game isn't sustainable. And it's just being open to that feedback and going, I don't like that. Okay, cool. If you had it all your way, how would you change it? I could do that. Or, nah, I really can't do that, but here's what I could do instead. And now we can have an open negotiation, but it's a negotiation for both of us to win, not I'm going to take from you before you take from me. Because like any give and take long term, it's not a win. It needs to be give and receive. Because taking, there's a lack of consent. Give, receive, it's like it's open. You're free. Go
Right.
ahead. Handing to
That
you.
brings up something I want to ask you, Jeremy. I want to kind of pause you and follow through on something.
Yeah.
So, how do you recommend if you're talking to a client, to a man, and saying, how should a man express his needs to his wife so it doesn't feel like he's demanding, but he's communicating in other words, what he needs without carrying a sense of obligation? How do you believe a man can do that successfully?
Yeah, first step is he's got to get clear with himself. And it's five things. What does he actually need? Not what does he want? What does he actually need? Like if I don't get this met, I'm going to go bad. I'm going to go ballistic. I'm going to lie, cheat, steal, whatever it takes to get my needs met. All right, what is that? What do you want? Which is like a need, but the intensity is not there, and you won't violate values to get your wants met, but you will to get your needs met. What would you love to give? What would you love to receive? And then what are your musts and must nevers? And the must nevers are the most important because those are the rule breakers. Like, oh, well, I mean, she only threatens me with a knife on Tuesday. The other 7 or 6 days a week is amazing. But that one day with the knife, I got to watch myself. It's like, no, no days with knives. So once he's clear with himself, what does he need? What does he want? Love to give, receive, must never. Now we go into his needs, but communicating them. I would love to receive this. I would love to experience this. I would love to have this. And it's now, she has to be the one to fulfill it? Is it just needs to be fulfilled in some way, shape, or form? So where's that onus? And then you getting to a place of appreciation and abundance where she wants to give versus she has to give. Because once we get into expectations and entitlements, that's when positional authority, you have to, because that starts to feel like we're being used. And it's not an invitation and it's not a request, it's a demand. And when we start getting into demands, we start getting into what's the word? I can see it, but I can't say it. But once we start getting into the if you don't, then I'm going to extortion. Once we get into extorting our partner, it's no longer a healthy relationship. There's no longer an energy flow, because if you don't do this, then I'm going to go cheat on you. I'm going to go get my needs met somewhere else. And it's like, be my guest, have fun, get out of here. Because that's not an invitation anymore. We've taken away the consent. It's either you give in to my demands and dictates, or I'm going to. So we don't want to get into ultimatums and extortions. This is the standard. So help me understand, if there's something blocking this, there's something coming up. Help me understand what's preventing you, or what's limiting you, or what's holding you back. And so we want to turn that conversation as much as possible into a winnable, consensual discussion for both of you. Because, a lot of guys, I have needs, and I have a clip on YouTube that went pretty high on sexless marriage. And there's a lot of guys that are struggling with that. And they're like, well, if she's not gonna, then I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna get it wherever I need because the Bible says the man has to have. And it's like, dude, that's such a user thing. Do you like it when she says that about your money? Because you're making her horse trade physically, she's making you horse trade financially. Does that make either of you excited and proud? Then we need to change this whole conversation. That entitlement, it's never useful. So it's really for him getting clear on what he actually needs and wants. And then he's going to communicate it to her from a place of, are her needs being met? Is she filled to overflowing or is she depleted? Because going to her saying, I need more than what you're giving me. And she's like, I'm giving you everything I have. Well, that's not a good conversation because she's now pushed into a corner. And so that's where he's got to know how to open up the conversation, create that context. And that's where talking with someone like you or me can be helpful because
Sure.
he's got that diving board one way in, but I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
think,
but
yeah. And I think a great point. And I think, when you ask a man what intimacy is, he typically will say sex. And when you ask a woman what intimacy is, she says, emotional connection, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of men, you talk about sexless marriage, and Tina and I have had conversation with some other guests on the show about, what's healthy, what isn't, and women have very different needs, and if men says I need more intimacy or I need more sex in my relationship, and I say, well, how about tell me all the other ways you're intimate with your wife, and you kind of get the blank stare. They're like,
Yep.
what do you mean other ways, right? And we're all, we're talking intellectual intimacy,
Yep.
experiential intimacy, spiritual
Yep.
intimacy, financial
Yep.
intimacy. I mean,
Yeah.
you just go down the route. And what's so beautiful, or I think when a woman is emotionally full, she's willing and ready and wants to experience other kinds of intimacy. I
Exactly.
think I don't, and I'm not sure why men, I think it's because men have been modeled and struggled and said, you don't do that. You're not emotionally vulnerable, available. You don't need to go there. But if
Yeah.
the more men can meet the emotional needs for their wives, the better their physical intimacy will be because the pump is primed. And
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
a woman is full and she's overflowing, so of course she's going to want to give when she's feeling that way. But the
Yeah.
physical intimacy, I think, really is the outcome of having all the other intimate needs met and exceeded. And I think that the men want to focus on the result they want as opposed to, am I doing the process I need to get there?
Well, when you bring up the different layers of intimacy, the big four that I use is experiential intimacy first, social intimacy, go do stuff together. Mental intimacy, here's what I think. Emotional intimacy, here's what I feel. And then physical intimacy. And for women, very often it is experiential, mental, emotional, which is the doorway to physical. And for a lot of guys, they are so physically starved just for connection. When I was single in my 30s, I trained martial arts 5 to 7 days a week. So I'm getting physical contact, but it's all in the context of punching, kicking, choking, sweeping, locking, throwing weapons, combat, fighting. Nobody has access to my back without a ton of resistance. Like nobody, like I didn't get hugs other than like a handshake, didn't get hugs rubs, like unless I went and paid someone to get a professional massage, zero physical contact beyond handshake and violent fighting type stuff. Zero anything else. And there are guys that that's their experience for years and years and years. So they are so hungry and hurting for physical touch that yeah. Social, emotional, intellectually, dude. Like they're so hungry and hurting on a physical level that any attention they're ready to go and they're hungry, they're hurting, and it makes women feel like prey because you're a snack, you're a meal because I'm so hurting and hungry and raw. And that can lead to a lot of dysfunction, a lot of unhealthy places. That's where it's helpful, guys are opening up a little bit more, getting bigger conversations. Even this conversation is a level of emotional and mental intimacy that we're sharing different thoughts and models, not to argue who's right, but to give different examples of what's possible. How can you play this game called relationship and marriage and intimacy This is what a lot of women are hungry for from men, is that mental, I want to know what he's thinking. I want to know what matters to him. I want to know what he feels is important to him. And because it's a lot of women having those types of conversations, a lot of guys are forced to have to do the intimacy their direction versus like you and me talking. And it's like women can hear a little bit different example of mental and emotional intimacy. That's like, ooh, I like that conversation. I want to hear those guys talk more. And it's like, guys, you can model this. You can understand this. It is a pattern. It is reproducible and it leads to really great places. But yeah, if my wife is filled emotionally, she's available for everything. And when she's depleted emotionally, she's a squeaky wheel. And I tell the kids, stop asking for you. Mom's depleted, fill her up.
Yeah. And the fact that you said we could talk some more, we're going to have to wind it down, and we're going to have to make a promise to our viewers to come back and pick up this conversation here, because it is, I think this is a huge, important conversation for men and women to hear, because as you're both talking, and Jeremy, you talk about men and their need for that touch. They really need, and your back. You talked about your back, and that's funny because I have a friend that all he wants me to do when we get time together is for me to touch his back, because nobody, he's always at work. He just wants me to touch his back. That's all he wants. And so I find that interesting. I also came from the martial arts where it was the same kind of thing. And I can remember just wanting to just lay still on my husband's lap, or just have them touch my hair, because those were things that were, different than what I was experiencing on the mat. So
Exactly.
have to come back to that. So as we come down to this, we get to this point, Jeremy, where we know what you're doing, and now we need to know where we can find you. All your information is going to be at the bottom in the show notes, but tell the viewers how they can find you.
Yeah, easiest thing, Google my name, Jeremy Roadruck, Roadruck. I'm literally the only me on the internet. There's about 300 Roadrucks, and I'm the only Jeremy in the group, it seems. So that's easy. I'm on Facebook is where I'm most active. I've got a YouTube channel with content, and my main website is Lead Like a King. And that's where I've got the new book coming out, Lead Like a King, the proven roadmap to mastering marriage, deeper connection, and unstoppable leadership. I take 51 client case studies and I map them into what I call the roadmap to relationship mastery for men. It's a 9-step, the boy, the man, the king. And how do you really show up in all 3 dimensions? The boy is the past, the man's the present, the king is the future. It's your legacy, whether it's career or kids. But how can you secure something beyond yourself? And that conversation, like you have to be a certain age and a certain, 20 years old, you're not thinking legacy so much, and that's not wrong. But it's a very fascinating conversation, and I'm really excited to be bringing this book forward and the course that goes with it. I'm working on right now, and I love the material I'm putting together. It's going to really help transform a lot of lives.
Awesome. So I know Matthew also has a book. So Matthew, tell everybody how they can find you.
Sure. I'm a core energy coach. I've gotten most of my training through the Gottman certified programs and through my training in IPEC, which is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. My superpower is communication, and I teach men and women how to master that art so they can co-create the relationship of their dreams. And if you want to learn more about me, my programs, and what I do, you can go to MatthewPHoffman.com. For anybody listening today who wants to experience the power of coaching in their relationship, you can go to that website, sign up for a free coaching call so you can see just how impactful it can be to work with someone who's able to guide you, hold you accountable, and give you plans to where you want to be. You can find me on LinkedIn at MatthewPHoffman, on Facebook at MatthewPHoffman, or on Instagram at MPHCoach.
Oh, awesome. And he wrote the book, The Kick-Ass Husband. So I think that is an important aspect, with both of you guys having wonderful books out there for men to read to help them in their communication skills. That's a very important thing. So I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in the complexities of divorce. I'm trained in transition and recovery, and I work in the high conflict divorce arena, especially that of a toxic ex somebody you're wanting to get out of. My husband, my late husband, my father, and myself all experienced that abuse. And so not only do I know this from my training, I also know it firsthand. And you can find me, or you can communicate with me. Send me an email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's Coach COACH Tina TINA Lynn LYNN @gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me on social media on Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, HUGGINS, on LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, on Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. And so I would like for you to give a last little bit of advice to us, Jeremy.
If you can trade expectation for appreciation and express gratitude, everything gets easier. Your kids, your wife, yourself. Instead of, I have to, I should, I must. Yeah, I really love that. I love the way I like that. Thank you for it. Give them points for the things that matter to you. They know how to win, and it's easier for them to play with you. And it's easier for them to start giving that back to you as well, because it's natural to reflect. When we fill people up, they'll start to fill us back up too. It's a win-win.
Amen. And Matthew, what's your advice?
I would say lead with a servant mentality. You're not here to get, you're here to give. And the best questions you keep asking yourself is, what more can I do? If you're filling full your partner, your spouse, your wife with so much, they're eventually going to overflow. And if they overflow, it's going to make you the recipient of all the good that they have to offer. So seek your own in another's good.
So, and my last bit of information is that these two men are here. And especially for you guys that are watching, please reach out, because I don't want you to end up on my table. I want you to fix things and to work things out. If you can't fix things and work things out and you come to me, you can still seek these guys out, because it's about bettering yourself. You don't want to seek the same type of relationship that you've been seeking. You want something better. You want something magical. That's what I had with my late husband. So make sure that you're doing your work in your relationship, or if you divorce, do your work on yourself so that you don't have to come back to my table. So if you are involved in a domestic situation right here, call 911, or in the UK, 999. Press charges. That is your key out of the abuse. Do not drop those charges. Once you drop those charges, what has happened will only increase and get worse. This is your key out. Keep the charges pressed, start the divorce proceedings, and get out of the abuse. If you or somebody else is dealing with domestic violence, please call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. So I ask that you please like, comment, and share so this information can help others. And I thank you so much, Jeremy, for being with us. And of course, Matthew, for being such a wonderful co-host with me. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. It has been fun. Love these kind of conversations.
Amen.